Happy to have my next guest on the Sports Card Shop guest line. Meant to get her on sooner, but better late than never. Very talented young lady. We're going to talk about some of the stuff she's doing in the hobby. But welcome to Lauren Rizzo Shaffer. Welcome finally.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, glad to have you. Like I said, I kind of apologized before we started recording, but meant to have you on sooner. But here you are today, and like they say, better late than never. I'll kind of start with the standard first time on the podcast kind of question, kind of how you got into the hobby, where it all started for you.
Well, I when I was a kid, I did like the typical like Pokemon cards and that kind of stuff. Um, Vince Carter is from the area I grew up in, so like there were a lot of like little giveaways or things with him. So we looked for him, but it was just kind of like a casual thing for my brother and me. And then when I met my husband in 2018, he was like, "Yeah, one of my hobbies is like collectibles," and I was like, "Oh, okay." And I didn't understand the extent of what that meant. And so he kind of started introducing me to things. And then the probably the biggest thing, because I already liked sports. I love the NBA, so we bonded over that. And this was just like kind of a new way to enjoy and experience sports. And when Zion Williamson was in Prism, I remember that was kind of the first time that I like seriously opened packs with him. He got like boxes, and we were hunting, and he's like, "This is the guy. This is who we're looking for." And that was kind of the big like catalyst. And then of course, like with a lot of people, the pandemic kind of accelerated a lot of interest and attention, and how I kind of was, navigating the hobby. So yeah, it's really fun. Like I feel like I learn a lot. I think there's a lot of resources. There's a lot of cool people, and it's for me mostly like a really fun way to connect with people and a really fun way to connect with sports. And those are two like just very important things for me. So
So what you're saying it was your boyfriend's fault, who's now your husband.
basically, yeah, yeah, it's really his fault why I just am like I everywhere I look in my house there is some little square of cardboard. So
So you mentioned Vince Carter, and I knew that already. But for those listening, I wanted you do you try to? I mean, is that someone who you chase after their cards? Like, what do you collect? Is it
A little bit. I do have some Vince Carter cards. A lot of stuff I like have an interest in, and my husband's just like instead of like flowers or jewelry or like purses, whatever, like he gives me cards that he sees, and so I have a couple like I have right now. They're on my shelf behind me, but I have like a series of cards. Some of them are like shoe pieces, some of them are jerseys of him on like different teams. Um, so he was on the Magic, but like very briefly, and the Orlando Magic's my team. But Vince Carter's kind of just been like an ever present person for people in the area. And like my husband, his dad, when Vince Carter was still in high school and like barely barely a name, he would go to the Y and like play. So like my father-in-law played basketball with Vince Carter, and it's just kind of like a thing. He's just kind of always been around. And so yeah, so like reconnecting with like I have a book that was signed when I was like, I don't know, 12 maybe. And to like now have all these cards and like find that book when I'm unpacking stuff, like, connecting the past with the future, it's like it's really cool. But as far as like what else I collect, because that's kind of a very small portion. I collect a lot of Shaq. Again, Orlando Magic fan. Um, and we moved to Florida when I was like not even two. So when he was drafted and when the Orlando Magic came up, like he is another thing that's just kind of always been around. I've just always had this like, peripheral appreciation for him because he's just like ever present. And so yeah, so my card collection is a lot of Shaq. I have a lot of custom cards that are Shaq. Like a lot of my friends, they know like that's my guy. Um, I also collect Coco Golf. I got into collecting tennis about a year ago because there's not. It's now that Tops has it, there's like a little bit more to do with it. But yeah, that's mainly my main PCs are Coco Golf and Shaq, and then like a couple like little ones here or there. So
Yeah, and Shaq, anyone like I was in the hobby when he came out of LSU and was the number one pick. Like you didn't have to be a basketball fan. He had that kind
right,
of
exactly.
personality, as you know, Lauren. Like to, and even now, I mean, he's still in the limelight, not as a player but as an analyst, commercials,
Mhm.
as a spokesperson, and so he's a hard guy not to like. Like it's hard not to like him. He's just
Yeah.
he's not a huge trash talker. Sometimes he'll say a few things, but he's generally a gregarious type of guy.
Yeah.
Funny. Will even make fun of himself, which is always a good trait. And I'm not necessarily an Orlando Magic fan, but I've always had a fondness for Shaq as during his playing days, and even now, it's just whenever you see him, whether it be a commercial or doing some coverage of the NBA itself. He's a guy like you really have to try to find a reason not to like him because he doesn't give you a lot, and he looks like he'd be a fun guy like just to hang out with
Right?
for a
Yeah, he
day.
looks like a
One
fun
of
guy
those.
to just kinda, like, hang out, chat. I feel like he could talk about I like one of the things I really like about him too is, like, he took his education really seriously and,
Yeah.
went back and, like, got a like, he earned a doctorate, it's not honorary. Like, I think he's just, like, you have one life, and he's really made the most of it. He's lived 1,000 lives, and, like, he's not perfect, obviously, nobody is, but like he's just a really interesting figure that's just kind of always, been there and like to just kind of have that connection and like also like express that with people that people know I like him and so they'll send me random cards or they'll like my card art friends will send me one if we do a trade or whatever like sometimes they're just like I know you like Shaq and I now look for him more and so it's cool. It's nice that like he's such an easy figure to like casually pay attention to and he casually comes in and out of your life that like I don't know. He's just a joy. Like I just feel like he's a joy and yeah. So I like collecting them because it just is like it's just fun and joyful and yeah, I don't know.
No, it makes sense. And again, I remember, like, when he came into the league. I mean, Jordan was still around, but
hmm
like he was a different, obviously being a center and a big man,
Right.
and his personality, and he was even did a rap album. Shaq, like
Right. Yeah.
he just was so he was so good for the NBA because he was so different than what was already there, and he was being himself. It wasn't like he was
Exactly. Yeah, it's not
or
forced. It's just
yeah,
him.
that's who he was, and he was just sort of a breath of fresh air. And then they got Penny, and they
hmm
were a contender for many years with the dynamic duo, and he's one of the as we know with some big men in the NBA, Lauren, right? A lot of wear and tear on the knees and ankles, and so some
Yeah.
of these careers unfortunately aren't long. He now, I'm not saying he didn't have some injuries and stuff, but he put together a pretty long career. Obviously, a Hall of Famer, and he didn't go away. Like he loves the game.
Yep.
I think he's the kind of guy. That's why I say he'd be like a fun guy to hang out with because I think he loves people. I think
Yes.
he loves to have fun, and I think that comes through in whatever he's doing, whether it's a commercial or seeing him, on the air and as as an analyst, or and it's obvious he loves basketball, right? To be
Mhm.
involved in that sport in the way he has as first as a player and now even after his career is over. So that passion for him, shines through, and I think that stuff's contagious. When you see someone like
Mhm.
that, you sort of gravitate to someone like that. And like I said, I'm not necessarily a Magic or a Lakers fan
Right.
or anything like that, but he's just like a fun guy. He's hard to root against because, you know,
Exactly. Yeah.
uh, and so if my team wasn't in it, I would probably root. If Shaq's team was, that's who I kind of tended to root for. So not a bad player. To like. I got to ask you, between Vince Carter and Shaq, have you ever met him in person?
Um, I haven't. I did meet Vince Carter when I was younger. That book signing was at like a local Barnes and Noble, so like it was like very quick. Um, so I haven't. I actually I think that is the only time I've met him. I've met um like his stepfather. I think it was his stepfather was an educator, so he was like a substitute teacher sometimes in school. So like we would see him around. He would tell us stories, like substitute teachers do. They just kind of like have fun, and it's very easy when like Vince Carter's your son to like just kind of like you know just goof off and like talk about Vince Carter and stuff.
It's
And then Shaq,
definitely a good icebreaker. Like, hey, guess what? Or
right?
just
Like yeah, and Vince is like just really interesting because his I'm pretty sure it was his stepdad. Now, like my mind's fuzzing on it, but was a music instructor, and like Vince was in the band in high school, and like I was in band. I was very big into band, and so like I think like with Shaq is another thing I like about Vince is that he's a dynamic person. Like what they do on the court is not it's incredible and it's fascinating, but it's not all that they have to offer. And I really like that. And then Shaq, I haven't met him, but I was at the game earlier, well, earlier this year, last season, when the Magic retired his jersey. I was able to be there and like see that in person. So I didn't get to meet him or talk to him or anything, but like to hear him speak, to hear other people speak about him, and to like kind of revisit like you kind of forget a lot of my friends when they start when they started looking into like the Shack cards and stuff, and knowing I liked him and that was like my guy, they were like he wasn't there very long. He wasn't like he was there for 4 years. Like it was not a very long tenure, but it was very impactful. And so yeah, so like to be able to like be in his presence at least, and like see his kids and his colleagues, and just the decades of impact he's had, um that was really cool. That was really interesting. So
yeah, and you said something that I didn't even realize that, right? That he was only in Orlando for a year.
Mhm.
That's the larger than life person. It felt like he was there 8 to 10 years.
Right, it felt like
Honestly,
he was there forever, and he was there
yeah,
for like 4 to now I'm doubting myself. It was like 4 to 6. It was not long.
yeah,
Like it was not very long.
yeah.
I
But
think he went to
even
LA
if
and
it's
lived there.
even at 6 years, it still
Exactly,
feels
that's
like
not much.
he was there double digit years, even though he might
Exactly.
not
Yeah.
have been. And I think that's a testament, Lauren, to him and his personality, obviously his play, and that sort of thing. And and going back to Vince Carter too, I know everyone views him just sort of as like a dunk master, which he is. I'm not taking
Mhm.
nothing away from him, but he was quite the player besides the dunking.
Mhm.
Like I don't think he gets enough credit for his play on the court with the clock running. Everyone
Oh,
likes to
yeah.
talk about the dunk competitions at the All Star breaks and that sort of thing, but he was a player. Like
Mhm.
sometimes I think when someone's really good at like something like dunking or 3-point shooting, they sort
Right,
of get
yeah.
pigeonholed, right? That's all they can do. Vince Carter was a heck of a basketball player.
Mhm.
He could shoot. He wasn't all about dunking. He could shoot. He could pass. He could play. He was a player, and so I think sometimes being the great dunker as he was, I think sometimes people just all they see or that's all they think when
Mhm.
it wasn't really the case. So I wanted to definitely mention that and give them some just desserts there.
Mhm.
You mentioned card art, and I know you do some of your own. And I've had a lot of the card artists on this show. I know what you do from seeing it, but which is you you probably make it look a lot easier than it is. But with stitching, onto the car, kind of talk about how did that start for you, and kind of behind the scenes, what you do there.
Sure. So kind of to harken back to the Zion Williamson hunt, we opened a lot of product, and there were so many cards, and base cards are they don't really have value, like they might have sentimental value, but like you can only have so many like base cards of a team, of a rookie from your, like it's and there were just so many, and I was like, this is crazy. Like, and this is one person, or two, but like one person pursuing, and opening so many cards and packs and stuff, and I was like, I it's stressing me out how many cards we're throwing away. But it's also like, what do you do with them? Your local card shop can only hold so many and do so much. And, there's only so many kids that you can hand base cards to before they're like, okay, I don't know what to do with these. So I just kind of was like, I already had been embroidering. I'd been doing, that kind of stuff since I was a kid. I grew up in Florida. My grandparents were about, 20 minutes away. So I spent a lot of time with like older people. And so like needlepoint's always just been a thing that, I did and whatever. And I just kind of, as I got older, I started doing my own patterns and my own, different things that, weren't necessarily, you know, grandma approved. But yeah, we had all these cards, and I had left my job, my office job, and I was like, I don't like really know what I'm gonna do right now. I had, some like it kind of tapered off. I didn't immediately leave my job. That's boring. That's not, necessarily something you want to hear about. But I had some time in between leaving. I would work a couple days and then be home, and I was like, what am I going to do with all this free time? Like, I haven't had free time like this, and it was 2021, so like, we'd all been through 2020, which was very very rough. And of course there was, the boom of interest and people returning or joining the hobby. And so I was like, I don't know, maybe I could stitch on cards. Like, let me just see if I it just kind of seemed like a dumb fun thing to do. And I was like, if it doesn't work, at least it was something, and I'll just move on to the next thing. And and then I did it, and I was like, oh, this is doable. Like, this is because we have a lot of like chrome prism, mostly prism because of basketball, but select whatever. But yeah, I was like, I can do this. Like, this is possible. And so it was a fun way to join my interests, to seek out cards and look for cards and acquire cards, or like examine the design and be like, what could I do with this? And then also, just kind of using my experience, that's just something that's kind of innate in me, and how I could challenge it, and really challenge myself beyond doing like the typical embroidery or cross stitching. Like, it is a big challenge, and it's actually like I've had to take a little bit of a break because like my hands were just getting so cramped. I had to dial it back, unfortunately. But yeah, it's just another fun way to kind of like connect with my interests. And I like it too also because I like to find like the personal reasons to, like we talked about Vince Carter and Shaq, and like how they're more than just players. And I like learning about athletes and like what else they offer, because it's not just, a few hours a week, that you see them on your TV screen. They're whole people who have lives behind them, and people that surround them and experiences. And I like kind of learning like the humanity that stands behind them, and like spending time with that, and like kind of, marinating on it as I work on that card. Like I'm not going to sit there and stare at a picture of a person that like I don't really, care about or have some kind of like even minute vested interest in. So I'll just show you real quick, like, as I have a couple here, so in
Yeah,
case people are like, what is she talking about? She stitches cards. Since we're talking about Vince Carter, I did this one about a year ago.
yeah, that's cool.
And it's the logo in the background. I also did a like a city edition with the gold and the black. Um, excuse me. And then I did a LeBron one recently, which I hadn't done LeBron yet because I don't know. I put a lot of
Right.
pressure on myself with like LeBron and Kobe, and I don't want to, do something that I don't like. Um, which that's ridiculous for art, but
Well, you're investing. I think it's a good point you made too. Like you're investing your time, so you probably want to like the guy, or at least have some sort
exactly,
of
yeah,
interest into the person. I don't want to say even just guy, but the person
yeah,
that you're doing the work on the card with the embroidery or the stitching, right? You're obviously going to pick someone that you have some sort of liking to, right? Unless it's
hmm,
strictly commission, and even
right,
then, you're still investing your time, but at least you're getting hopefully compensated for it. I think it's cool how you sort of merged both of your worlds, right? Your hobby side with another hobby side, right?
yeah,
That you're good at, and like you said, even though you know how to do that stuff, doing it on with the medium of a sports card, that changes the degree of difficulty changes
hmm.
with that medium. Did I mean how was it when you first decided to do it? Was there a lot of trial and error, or was it not? Did you come out of the gate kind of swinging and it was good?
It was, I mean, there wasn't necessarily like in the um like the concept, I guess, for lack of a better term. It was more the methods that I kind of had to troubleshoot. I just kind of, because again, like the I hate like being like, oh, the physicality of it, but like it's all it's very concentrated.
Well,
And
listen, I'm going to stick up for you. Anyone that's worked with their hands, whether you're, in
yeah.
the pottery, crochet, cross
Mhm.
stitch, embroidery, you're a laborer that just uses hand as like that continuous same motions, right? Well, that
Yep.
adds up. And anything you do,
Yeah.
athletes who are always running, their knees and
Mhm.
ankles are, and so it's along those same lines. And I think most people understand it. I think most people probably dealt with some sort of pain or soreness in the
True.
very least, if that's it, if not arthritis or,
Mhm.
carpal tunnel or, or whatever it may be. Like, I think people can fully understand. My grandma, rest her soul, was huge into crochet. And even as a younger lady, but as she got older, and then she started getting arthritis in her hands. But the
Mhm.
crochet for her was a way to keep her hands sort of moving, to
Yep.
sort of stay. It didn't make the arthritis go away, but it sort of staved off. Where if, I think if she would have stopped crocheting, Lauren, it would have got worse. And
Right.
there was points she would tell me, like, her hand would start to close, and she'd
Mhm.
literally, and it would hurt, she'd have to put her hand against the wall and press,
Yep.
just like to force her hand open. And so, she'd always say like she enjoyed the crocheting anyway, but it was also therapeutic in the sense with the crocheting. So I think, you don't, obviously you're not a positive, but you don't have. I think people understand that, that repeated of similar motions, what that adds up,
It does.
whatever it
Yeah.
might be. So I get it, and you do some incredible stuff with that. Is it? Can you do it? This I don't know the answer to. I've seen what you do. obviously I would think like thicker stock cards, Prism, your Select,
Hmm.
your Chromium. It's probably a little bit easier to work with than your normal cardboard stock. Can it be done on normal cardboard stock?
It can, but I sometimes I have to modify it. Like sometimes, people are like, "Oh, this would be a great idea," and they like give me a suggestion. I'm like, "It would be," but like it it's just like I'd have to find a workaround. Like that's a lot of times if I have an idea, I try to find a workaround to see if I can do it. Like Kayla collects. She told me once, she was like, "Okay, there's this card and it's a very specific moment and it's her story, so I'm going to butcher it, but basically like she went to a game and it was one of her favorite players and I think that she gave them Skittles and the player had a fantastic game and then the photo was from that game and she's like it would be great if you could like stitch Skittles onto the card and I was like that would be really cool but then I was like, the reality was setting in of, oh my God, how am I going to do that though? And you think
Yeah.
it's like it would be very simple, but I also want it to look a certain way. That's the thing. I don't want to just do it because like it's an idea and
You
it's out
take
there.
you take pride in your work. You take pride
Yes,
in your
a
work.
lot. Like, and I know we're
Yeah.
going to talk about like the writing with Sports Illustrated and Hobby News Daily
Yeah.
too, but like um I do. Like if my name is attached to it and I'm dedicating any amount of time to something, um, I definitely want it to be something that I'm happy that people can see. I don't want to half-ass anything. I know I really, if I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it well. I'm going to do it, my
Yeah.
way. And
Yeah.
but I have been working on it, but again, like my hands were just so bad this year that I it's been slow. I finally figured out how to do it and I'm working on it, but it's like it's gonna take a while. But yeah, like the LeBron card, because like a lot of his early cards, they're not, like chrome or they're
Yeah.
not that style. So this one's a little bit thinner, but it's got kind of like a little bit of like a laminate because it's not matte. So I
Yeah.
could kind of like get away with a little bit more with that. Um, and some paper, like I think I'm trying to think of any other specific examples, but yeah, like the thinner and the more like paper like they are, it's possible, but I have to definitely modify my expectations and my methods. So
Yeah. No doubt. And listen, if your hands are not cooperating, right, it's no, it's nothing wrong with like taking a break and when you feel like you can get back to it, right? I don't think anyone would fault you there. I certainly won't.
I
Speaking
appreciate
of speaking of card art, like we've seen, you know, card art to me, Lauren, and I've told this to other card artists that have been on the show. It's always been a part of the hobby. I mean, even
yeah,
the early vintage baseball cards, or a lot of those were paintings done by card artists, let's
right.
say. But I really think like so, card art's not necessarily new, but I think COVID really brought out a lot of ingenuity and new ways to do it that
Mhm.
haven't been done before. And it was an explosion of card art. And Tops really jumped on it with their
Yeah.
2020 line
Mhm.
and really came to the forefront. But I always make a point like it's not new. We're just seeing a lot more and a lot of creativity in the space that we hadn't seen prior. And obviously, as time moves on, right, we have better mediums, better technologies, things we didn't have in the past. Who would have thunk, right, that a 3D printer would actually be a thing someday? That's almost like science fiction, but that's like an everyday item now, at least for those
Right.
who use it. But even on the card art side, right, you just see some incredible stuff. What people are doing to the point where Topps even implicated and hired some of these artists, and then there's sometimes you see artwork not even done by Topps artists that's better than some of the stuff you're seeing. The professionals, if you will,
Right.
doing it. And that's the beauty. You can do anyone can do it. I don't want to say anyone can do it. sure as heck
No, yeah, but
can't
they
do it.
can,
But
yeah,
anyone can attempt to do it. I guess is
exactly.
maybe the best way to do it. And there's just some crazy stuff I've seen, including what you do with stitching and embroidery. You know, I can't draw a stick figure, so nothing's coming out of this camp. You know, my son is a good artist, and my dad was. I always say this, and apparently I it skipped me. So,
I bet
you
you could
know,
find your lane though, and
yeah,
you do
I
so many
don't
other
know.
things, like, I
Yeah,
don't know why you would dedicate that time, but if you wanted to, I think you could find
yeah.
your lane. I think you could find
Yeah,
a
well, let
way.
me put it this way: I'm definitely gonna be on the lower end of that totem pole, whatever, when it comes to artwork and that sort of thing. So I really have an appreciation when I see people who are talented, and some of the stuff, you know, is obviously crazy, and it's like, oh my god, like I couldn't even think of doing that, let alone do it. Right? I couldn't
Right?
even come up with the concept, let alone make it actually reality. And I guess my one last question to the card art space, like, do you think, like, I know it exploded and it's kind of settled down a little bit, yeah, you think people get tired of that, or I don't necessarily, but do you think maybe like anything else, you know what I mean, it's like on to the next thing? You think there's a little bit of that goes on when it comes to card art?
I think that's a very good question because, I mean, it's a good question. Um, there, because you're right. You know, a lot of things in the hobby, there's an ebb and a flow. You've been doing it long enough to definitely know that, and I'm sure notice patterns and waves of things. Um, I think it's I think it's in a very interesting space right now where people are trying to kind of figure out the longevity of, and like you said, card art has always been a part of the hobby. This, since 2020, has been, with social media and everything, the diversity has kind of created a level playing field. And I think now it's kind of like, okay, well, what are we what do we want out of it? Kind of, what are we putting out there, and what do people want to see out of it? And I think it's kind of similar to, like, unlicensed versus licensed. Some people will not touch unlicensed product, and that's how you collect. That's fine. Um, but some people, they see card art and they see modified cards, altered cards, danger, trying to pull one over. Um, so I think it's in a good place right now. Um, but I do think it's, I don't know, it's in a great place. Like, I love card art, and I think it's very good right now, but I think a lot of, like, my friends personally, um felt a little bit of dejection with, um some of the reception, in the sense that they thought it was nefarious. And I know in the last couple of years, there has been a lot of talk of, like, card altering, cleaning, and I think a lot of people are wary of card art because they see it as, you're trying to push this product on me and say this is an official product that people should appreciate and acknowledge and exchange and put into, the the system of cards, of, selling and transacting and trading, and appointing value to something that you made. And I think it's hard. I think it's hard to kind of, um put those, two sides together, and make them see, in see how they can complement each other, and how it can all kind of grow together instead of being, in combat with each other. um but also, like, it's been kind of a sensitive time for people, again, like, with the, unlicensed stuff, and certain athletes signing with certain companies, and then, like, the corporatization of cards. I know a lot of people have had a lot of, conflicting feelings about that in the last few years, and that's fair, and I understand it's going to bleed into card art because it's a part of the conversation in mass. But, um I think a lot of the people who do it and do it well are, first of all, not trying to con anyone, not trying to pull one over on anybody, um, and I think are true artists too. I mean, I keep kind of looking over to the left here because I'm looking at like cards from my friends and like the creativity they've had. Like, I'm gonna show you. I hope you don't mind.
Yeah, yeah.
You know,
Go ahead. Go ahead.
this is, Kev's cards, and
Yeah,
he's incredibly talented, and he took, the select design when this came out. This is a,
yeah,
you know, from the WNBA select. I just opened some today. This design is kind of weird. It's not symmetrical. It's off to the side. What is all this like empty space? And like for me, I'm kind of like, what could I do with that as far as stitching?
yeah.
But also like, do I like this design as a collector? And he took it and he made many cards that are gorgeous with that. Like he took something that I wasn't necessarily like as is just a collector, not even an artist. Do I like this? And he made it into something spectacular. And yeah, I think that knocking the creativity um is I think that we should operate in good faith most of the time with these artists. I'll show you another one real quick.
Yeah.
I'm in a fantasy football league, and so one of my friends, when I won, I got to select them, and he made this card, and like Shaq moves in there, like it's a
That's
shot,
cool.
it's a thick shadow box, and like
Yeah.
he's dunking, and like I mean that I don't know, the mass production of cards is that's something that kind of like, with the junk wax era and everything. And I know people are debating, like, are we in a, junk wax renaissance or whatever? Maybe we are. But like, I like what people are doing and taking from the time and from the massive amounts of product and being like, well, what would I want to see? What would I want to do? How do I want to express my, you know, joy for the hobby and joy for sports and my creativity? So,
You make some great points, and I know some of that stuff where card art is involved with that artist having to cut up the cards and whether it be like what you just showed in the shadow box or just cutting up pieces and making sort of a kaleidoscope design and other designs, if you will. But here's the thing, like it's a bad pair. I know people make the parallel to those two things, but when it comes to like card trimming and cut, that's done to dupe somebody. Like they're
exactly.
not they're not someone that's doing that stuff doesn't want you to know they did that stuff.
Right.
That's the whole end game is like I'm going to sell this as it's not altered and hey, look at it, it's got four sharp corners and no
Mhm.
white edging and it's going to grade high or it did you fooled the grader in some cases, not all,
Right. Yeah.
right? Card art is not that. There's no secret. I mean, the secret might be in how the
Right.
heck did the artist do that. That's
Exactly. Yeah.
amazing, but there's no secret. Like they're not. This isn't designed to get graded and go from a 6 to a 9. You know what I
Right.
mean? That's not the end game there. So I get why some people draw those parallels, but it's you can't because they're two different animals. They're
Right.
not even the same species, and so
Exactly. Yeah.
and I think it gives card art a bad rep when it's not even an earned one. Like if you're gonna get a bad rep, at least they're not trying. Like this is all up in the like this is all 100% transparent. Like I'm going
Mhm.
to, look like Tim Carroll who cuts up real cards and then makes a picture of iconic cards with the cut up card. There's no
Yeah.
secret. He's at the national at a table doing it in front of it. So
Right.
like
Yeah.
and you're right. I think people connect those when there's really no connection. They are two different. One is a completely illegal, immoral act,
Right.
a theft in the sense, and the other one's creativity. And if someone wants to pay for that creativity and genius, then it is what it is. They're not. No one's buying. You know that shack you have. You're not sending that to PSA or SGC. for grading. They wouldn't grade it, but even if they did, you know what I mean. That's not necessarily what it's about. So
Right.
I get it. I think you make a great point there, and I think but the point is, these are two different things that shouldn't be put into the same box.
Mhm.
One is done by a criminal element, and the other is done by a very talented person. And someone might say, "Well, John, that trimmer might be talented. He might be, bank robbers can be talented too and
Right.
good at their craft. It's still illegal and a crime. So
Right. It's still
so
frowned upon though. So like,
yeah, yeah. So to put them in the same categories, not fair to the artists that are doing great work. But it's a great point because I think that's what exactly happens, unfortunately, and unfairly so. So hopefully that sort of changes and people see for what it really is meant to be, right? I think most people do. I think most people do, but you have that small segment, right, that just
mhm.
doesn't think about it maybe on that same level. Maybe me, you, and the majority uh, do. I know you mentioned Kayla. I believe the player was Austin Hayes. I could be wrong. I think
Yes.
that's.
Yeah, I
I
blanked on
think
it
so.
completely, but
Yeah,
yes, it
no,
is.
that's okay. That's okay. I just figured I'd throw that in there. Well, I want to segue to women in the hobby. You kind of mentioned that as well. Obviously, you are a woman in the hobby. Um, I've been in the hobby since 1979. I can tell you, as a 7-year-old kid in 1979, um, it was obviously, heavily, very few women involved in the hobby. When I did my first show as a 15-year-old dealer in 1987, same thing, right? Well, we've got a lot of room ways to go. Don't I'm not, well, I think the hobby's made strides in this category. We've seen
Yes.
women hold positions of power in the
Mhm.
corporate side of the hobby. We're seeing obviously a lot more female collectors. That is awesome. We're seeing more female dealers, which I think is
Yeah.
really super cool. It used to be. I'm gonna keep it real. Like it used to be, if you saw a female behind the table, it was someone's wife. Now
Mhm.
these are dealers themselves. They may not even be a husband. This
Right.
is and you know, Black Jade Wolf and others. I don't, I'll leave someone out, but there's we're seeing across the board at all different levels, dealers, collectors, jobs in the hobby, holding very important positions. For me, it's great to see because that's how it should be. The hobby should be about anything should be about diversity and including everyone. But we have a ways to go. I've heard the bad side of the stories where I've seen it. I'm not gonna lie. I've seen
Right.
firsthand being set up as a dealer, another dealer. How do I want to besmirch a female collector or assume she didn't know
Mhm.
as much because she was female, yet that wasn't the case. I've had that conversation. I don't want to say with a friend, but even just in a dealer acquaintance. And I'm like,
Mhm.
you went and assumed, and that's not the case. You can't, and I've had those tough conversations. So while we've made strides, Lauren, I know I'm being a little long-winded here. There's still a ways to go from your perspective as an actual woman in the hobby. What have from when you started and today? I'm sure you've seen strides, but kind of talk about even your own personal experiences, if you will. Kind of talk about piggybacking sort of off what I said uh, what you've seen firsthand, in the trenches, if you will, to be a little dramatic.
Yeah, I mean, well, first of all, I would like to say I appreciate that you acknowledge that you witnessed something and um you experienced that, through somebody else, because a lot of people, I will say, and not to paint with broad strokes, but they don't want to acknowledge that. And I don't want to sit here and be like, boo-hoo, it's so hard for me. But um if if it wasn't for my husband, I don't know that I would have stayed in this space. If it wasn't for social media, I know I wouldn't have stayed in this space. Um, it's a big part of the hobby, I think, and I don't think anybody would disagree with this, is community. And I think finding a community of women is what made me feel comfortable and able to stay, because there's just, I mean, just there's doubts sometimes. I'll just be frank. I have doubts sometimes. Do I know what I'm talking about? Do I belong here? Um, do I want to even go into this experience, whether it be, trading, or my husband, he's a dealer and I go with him. And um I'll be honest, I've had to tell him, like, I'm very happy to be here. If you need to run to the restroom or get a snack, I obviously am happy to be here by myself. But people will sometimes not talk to me when I'm there by myself. They I can greet them or whatever, and I've been
They
flat out
make you
ignored.
laugh. And I'll say what maybe you're, I don't want to say fearful, but you're a little tentative to say, right? You might be viewed as, oh, that's just the dealer's wife,
Yeah,
right? And you are. I'm not saying that if you
right,
are, right?
exactly.
But they think like, oh, she doesn't know anything about the car.
Right.
And it's the same conversation, not to kind of to cut in on here, but it's kind of
Go.
it's the same conversation I had with the dealer who I was set up next to, who basically belittled might be too strong. I don't think it was that bad, but he basically, without even knowing the young lady, just made the assumption that she didn't know anything because of her, uh,
Right.
race, or you know because she was female. And you
Right.
can't do that. You can't make that
No.
assumption just on visuals. And people do that all the time. I'm not, you know but you can't, or you should definitely try not to. And you know I saw the kind of the interaction between the two of them. She walked away. I don't think she was feeling pretty good about that interaction, and I knew him enough, Lauren, to say something to him. And I
Yeah.
used tact, in my conversation to him, and then I'll just give the Cliff Notes version. I basically said, I think you sort of, how come you said this and how come you said that? Well, I didn't think she knew, and I'm like, you just did you hear what you just said? You didn't think she did,
Right.
meaning she did. And I'm like, you can't, not anymore, and you shouldn't anyway. But especially the hobby is growing, and rightfully so. And I think he learned his lesson between the interaction and my conversation afterwards. And I'm not a gatekeeper per se. I don't believe. I think we're all gatekeepers, right? I don't think you self-appoint yourself. But I was glad I knew him enough, Lauren, that I could have that sort of tough conversation, if you will. And I think
Right.
after, between what happened with the conversation with the young lady and my conversation again afterwards, I think he realized sort of the error in his ways. And so I think when the next time comes, I think he'll, muscle memory, he'll revert back to, like, hey, I'm not going to make that mistake again. Or at least I hope so, right?
Right.
And we can learn from our mistakes, right? And,
Hmm.
and hopefully in this case, that dealer does. But so I've seen that, I've seen that firsthand, and I felt really bad. I almost wanted to, like, leave my table and, like, kind of go up to her and, like, hey, I like like, all dealers are not like that yet
Right.
either. Please don't, but I did. So I took my opportunity to sort of direct that at him, and sort of a teaching moment, if you will, which is the professional muscle in as well. But, and maybe prevent that. And I think that's, being proactive. That's where the change will
Hmm.
eventually occur. And so for me to, like, say that doesn't happen when I've seen it firsthand, I know it. I know it occurs, and I hate to say it, maybe it's more the norm than it should be in some scenarios. So, but I didn't mean to cut you off, but I wanted to
No,
interject.
yeah, I'm glad you
Just seeing
elaborated.
it yeah, just seeing it firsthand. But is again, and like going back to where you're behind the table, people making that assumption that, oh, she doesn't know, she's just watching the table to so and so gets back, and you can't do that. You
No.
can't do that. Even if it was the case, it still can't do it. It doesn't
Right.
make it right. And so, but go ahead. I mean, I just wanted to sort of interject there, but go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I appreciate you saying all that because and even you saying you felt comfortable talking to this person and saying like why would you treat somebody that way you know it it's hard, it is hard and I know a lot of people don't want to talk about this and they don't have this conversation, but it a lot of people talk about 10xing the hobby. I know that's kind of a massive slogan for some corporations and stuff. um you can't 10x it if you are trying to close people out, if you are trying to say you don't fit the mold. And I think you make a very good point too. A lot of people are like, oh well, that's just the wife, the girlfriend, whatever. I can hold space for both things. I can be a collector and I can be a spouse. I can I can be two things at once, and that seems to confound some people with that, whether they realize that or not. I might not know everything. Sometimes my husband has really high end cards and I don't know the details of the price, but like
Now
anytime
here's the other thing, and this will be a shorter interruption.
I
No one. Here's the thing. No one knows everything, Lauren.
right,
So it's
exactly,
not a male. I don't know
right,
everything. It's not a male. It's not men know everything and women don't. It's we can say that about every dealer, every person in the hobby. So
yeah,
we've got to stop like looking at someone at face value and then making all these assumptions. And no one knows everything. So it's
right,
it just becomes like how much do you know? But you
right,
know, and I learn something every day. And this is, I don't know, 44 years into the hobby, right? So yeah, but go ahead. I just wanted, when I hear you say, well, we don't know. Again, that's again a stereotype that we got
yeah.
to get away from.
You're right though, like, but that not everybody knows everything. But the bar is definitely, and I'm not saying in contrast to what you're saying. I understand what, I don't want you to think I'm being in opposition to what you're saying. Just to add on to it, the bar is higher for some of us. And you know, me having to text my husband on something because he didn't mark the price or whatever. Um, Not always, but sometimes people are like, "I'll just come back." And then and that's not more than anything that that makes me feel like a hindrance to, my husband's operation there. And that's not what it is, and that's not fair for me to put that kind of pressure on myself. Um I don't really remember where I was going, but um yeah, I don't I mean, I don't know how many I don't know how many times I could probably text any of my um female friends right now and say, has anybody ever challenged you when you were talking about something, Instagram or in person or what have you? And I would probably say maybe like 9 out of 10 times, the probably the top of mind response would be, "Oh yeah, they asked me to name like 5 players from that team, or name their statistics, the statistics of that particular." I can't tell you how many times I've tried to join into a conversation, um, mostly online, in the comment section or whatever, and the comments that come up underneath it are, name 5 players from whatever. Name their scoring average from the last 5 years.
They're they're giving you a test when there's no test
Yeah,
that
not
needs to be
necessary.
administered. Yeah.
Yeah, like if my husband has an opinion on an athlete, nobody's asking him like, "Okay, well what was, what was the shooting average in, 1994. Like,
Yep, and I
also, I
that's
don't care
another.
about that information.
I've seen that. I've seen that too. I've seen that.
Yeah,
I've seen that in the hobby, Lauren. I've seen that. Speaking of
everywhere. Yeah,
fantasy leagues, I play in baseball and football fantasy leagues, and we had a female person, a lady in our fantasy football league. Now I didn't know her. I just met her at the draft, but there were a couple, and I didn't do it, but there were a couple other guys in that league that, much like you just said, hey, you know, kind of quizzed her, like sort of to justify her being in the same room.
yeah,
And I think I even said, like, knock it off, guys. Let's get the draft going. Or like,
right,
I did it, and I said, listen, she's we're all paying $125 to enter in the league. Like, let's sort of like threw water on the fire, like to put it
right,
in that sort of way, instead of making it a bigger deal. And I think it worked because then we got going. But like, I felt bad. It was almost like she had to like earn her way in, and that again an unnecessary test. There is no test, right?
right,
If she
exactly,
doesn't know, right, that's her $125 in this case.
right,
She wants to play and enjoy it. That's her business. We don't have to quiz or test anybody.
right,
Um, so I see it's not even just again in the hobby. That's a fantasy league
right.
story, but but I know that happens, Avi, because again, I've seen it on that level too. Has it? Let me ask you this, kind of, and then we'll get into your writing. But has it improved, and are we moving? Are the improvements moving fast enough, or in your opinion, are we getting better? At the right pace, or not necessarily.
I think it's hard to say. It's hard to generalize that. I'll say for me, I'll be honest. I've never been a big like blocker for accounts, like blocking people. But if I have found that if I see something like that I deem unacceptable, I'll just go ahead and use that word. Unacceptable unacceptable from my experience. I will probably just go ahead and in the I don't we don't have to have ever interacted. I could just see your comment and just gut sense I don't want this part of my experience. And that's not with everything, but with the hobby, in order for me to not get burnt out on it, and to enjoy it, I have to curate my experience. And I don't want to speak for all women, all my friends, all minorities, like across the board. I think in some ways we've gotten better. I think in some ways it's been more overt or more covert. It just kind of depends. um I think I don't know. I'll just say I
Yeah,
want to think we're
it's
going in
hard
the right
because
direction.
you can't. You don't want, like my line. I always say, you don't want to paint with a broad brush,
Yes, yeah,
and it's not. Listen, I think we both will agree on this much, right? It's never going to be
right. It's not going
not
to be a
there.
utopia.
It's
It's
not
not
going
going
to
to
be
be
not.
all like roses every day. But I'm
Yeah,
here and I'm happy, and I wouldn't be if I wasn't. I guess I'll just say that.
yeah.
Now, is it the same level of happiness every day and in every interaction and experience? Probably not, but like overall, I still derive joy from being a part of this community, from collecting, um, from whatever aspect that I take in from my experience. I think that with people like you who are saying, um, not necessarily that this is a priority, but that this is something I'm willing to act on, and to divert somebody else's discomfort into my own, so that I can maybe prevent it in the future, because that's what you're doing with these interactions. And I think that's the biggest thing. I think for a lot of men it is hard to stand up to your friends, and I know you don't want to destroy relationships because it can impact your collecting down the line.
But I don't think you're wrong. For me, just speaking for myself, if that conversation ruins a friendship or an acquaintance, if you will,
Mhm.
then I probably didn't. What kind of friend did I? Hate to say it
Right.
like this, but what kind of friend did I really like? I don't, because
Exactly.
it doesn't align with how I was raised and what I believe in. So, and I'm not saying you have to all your friends you have to agree with everything they say. That's
Right.
not
But like
possible either.
basic
But
human,
there's yeah, yeah,
kindness,
yeah,
decency. I think
yeah.
that that's
So
a pretty, you know,
if I lose a friend or even a listener on the podcast because I stick up for somebody who deserves to be stuck it up for,
yeah.
then so be it. When my head hits the pillow that day, I'll sleep just fine and hopefully wake up just fine
Exactly, right.
as well too. So that's never been for me. And maybe it's easier for me than for some others. I again can't paint with that same but for me, just the way I was raised by my grandparents, and my grandfather died when I was 12, and so my grandma was still around for years after that. And for all intents and purposes, she was my mom. So, and a very strong female presence. So that's never going to be an issue with me. And even further than that, I have no problem, going to bat, if you will, to try to prevent some of that stuff we see. And like I said, if I lose a friend, an acquaintance, or a listener because of that stance, then it is what it is.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that. Like that's I'd be not okay if I didn't do anything, and think well my grandma would be very disappointed in me for not doing. Then I would have trouble sleeping at night. So that's kind of where I'm coming from. So we'll kind of well, hopefully the strides continue to get made. I will do what I can do when the opportunity presents itself, and I think it's important, and hopefully, and I think you make a great point too, Lauren, where you know, like there's nothing wrong with like either not accepting someone's friend request or deleting someone if it's ruining your hobby enjoyment, right? That's
Mhm.
nothing wrong with that. You don't have to apologize for that, and I don't want you to go nowhere. And so, if that's if that's at the sacrifice of someone who maybe doesn't have great morals to begin with, then it is what it is. And so whatever you got to do, right? They're
Exactly.
not.
Whatever gets
They're
you through
not.
the day, I
Yeah.
support you.
Yeah. Exactly. All right. So kind of coming down the home stretch here, we both happen to write for Sports Illustrated Collect and Hobby News Daily.
Yeah.
And you do great. You do great work, and we'll get where you can plug kind of direct people where at the end here. But is writing something you've always done, or is it something you've sort of honed your skill? Like where does writing fit in? Uh, for you.
I mean, I've always been interested in reading and writing since I was a little kid. It's just kind of always been uh probably like with the needlepoint. Like it's just kind of an innate I just to kind of like facilitate this conversation. When I was a kid, I had something wrong with my foot and I couldn't play a lot of sports and I was little. I was like 6 or 7. So, I did a lot of like more stationary things. And so, I wasn't ever going to be an athlete, but I liked sports and I appreciated it. And but I did a lot of quiet things like reading and writing and stuff. And I got my degree in English in college and so I kind of, I've always had like writing's always been kind of one of the things that I feel that I'm very I am just very good at. I just to put it plainly, it's one of the things that I can not always, some of my articles probably aren't perfect. Like they're probably not a great read, but it's one of the things that I feel like comes to me pretty naturally. And yeah, and so, when Danny with Hobby News Daily, he asked me if I wanted to write. I think, gosh, I think it was December because I was going to start in January, so it's been almost a year. He asked me if I, would like to, and if, I thought I had anything to say. And I was like, I don't really know, but this is really cool. And I'd like to be a part of it. So I'll figure it out once a month. I can definitely figure it out. So yeah, so I've been able to kind of, merge my passions and the things I enjoy, and also again built a good community. I've gotten to know more about you, and like Adam Palmer, and then Kayla. We got to connect even more on that, and Danny is incredible. I'm like very glad that I have like a direct line now to him, and that I like um it's really great. And then when he asked me to do Sports Illustrated a little over a month ago, I was like, yeah, absolutely. Like, I yeah, I'll do it. So, yeah, it's once again just kind of everything working together towards a certain point.
And you do a great job, and you're far more trained than I am, being like you said, an English major. You know, I'm lucky I can speak it sometimes, let alone write it. And it's funny hearing you say like you write something and like, is it good or I don't know. I think all writers, if you will, sort of go through that. And there's sometimes like I'll write something and I'll like I don't think that's very good, and it'll get good feedback. And then there's that
Right. Yeah.
works. That's a two-way street now too. That could there's sometimes I think like, man, that I like that.
Right.
We all read ours like after we write it, we read it to ourselves, right? Oh, I like that, and like maybe we like it more than certain other people do,
Yeah.
if you will. So that's a double-edged sword, right? And I think that comes with the territory. I think for me too, writing is just another outlet. I wrote for Tough Stuff way back in the day. For those that remember the hobby magazine Tough Stuff. Um, and again, I'm not classically trained. I'm more self-taught, and I hope I've gotten better the more I do it. I'm
You're
more
very
of
good. I'll just go ahead and say
yeah,
that. You're very good.
I speak from experience. Like I just share my experiences. I
Yeah.
also share my opinions, and sometimes people agree with them, sometimes people don't. That's the beauty. No one ever says, "I wonder what John feels about that," because it's
I
pretty
do.
apparent.
I
Yeah,
do. I'm like,
yeah,
I can't wait to hear his his
yeah. I'm
thoughts.
not
I can't.
shy to one of the what I've had people say, "Listen, I don't agree with everything you say, John, but I really appreciate you because you
Yeah.
don't mince words."
Yes.
And and that's just another way. I'll hats off to my grandparents for kind of instilling that to express yourself and obviously do it the right way and don't be a jerk about it. But
Right.
um, you know, but I am opinionated, but you got this tact in that as well, right? It's easy to say top stinks or panini sucks. There's ways to do the same thing without using why is that? What can and
Right.
but also what role do it's easy for us as hobbyists and collectors to say that, but what can we do proactively to make that better or get
Yeah.
them to act? So
Exactly.
that's
But
kind
that's
of
what you
that's
do.
yeah,
That's how
that's the
you
space.
express. You have thoughts, but then you also are like, yeah, but I'm going to back it up and say what I think might help the situation. And
Yeah.
you're very good at articulating that.
Yeah, and it may fall on deaf ears, and
Yeah.
that is what it is. But that's how I try to be. Um, Very few people will read anything I write or hear a podcast episode, and man, he beats around the bush. That's not a
Right.
line someone will say with me, and that's on purpose, right? But I also try to be respectful and use tag. And I've had people on this very show, Lauren, and that were sort of in the limelight, maybe for not great things, and I have to ask tough questions too. But I do it in a respectful manner, and
You
I
do.
have had
Yes.
so and say, hey, I don't agree with that, or I've had someone from grading like I upcharges are a money grab. I don't like them. I know,
Same. Yeah.
well, here's why we do it, John. Whether you agree, agree with our explanation or not, this is why. And I still say, no, I hear you, but and I respect you, but I still don't like you. You didn't change my mind on
Right.
that particular
Yeah.
issue. And that's the that's the way it should be, right? And we
Hmm.
we can still be friends. We don't
Yes.
have to
Yeah.
agree across the board. We're obviously in an election year. We just had the election take place, and it always amazed me how much animosity and vitriol is involved. And I get it. We all want the folks we like to win, and but at the end of the day, I mean, in the United States, right? No matter who wins, right, we're all should be waving that same flag
Yeah.
at the end. And I don't think that always works that way or happens that way, but and in the hobby too, right? So many times like, you have to take like there's a line drawn. What side are you on? And I
Right.
agree. We have the side might be the opinion, but we're still on in the same fraternity of
Yes.
being the hobby. And I think more. I wish more people sort of thought along those lines, and I think we'd get along. The hobby would be even fun. The hobby is fun, but it'd be
Hmm.
even funner if we had a little bit more of that sort of sentiment rather than sometimes when we don't. All right, I don't ask this to every guest, but I do sometimes. I'm going to give it to you, Lauren. I call it my hobby magic wand. Obviously, unfortunately, it's not a real thing. I'm trying to invent it, but not coming up good in the lab. But it's a magic wand, like we traditionally know magic wands. But you get one wish, and it has to be hobby related. And you can do whatever you want. You only get one. You can't use one wish and say I want three wishes now.
Okay.
That
Right.
that that that's the only
No
rule.
workarounds here.
But yeah, but you can get rid of anything. You could say, hey, I want this Grail card. Whatever you want to use it for. That's the beauty of it. What are you using your hobby magic wand to do?
The knee jerk reaction was Christina's PC from Card Ladder. The neon green prism,
I
the fast break
know.
disco. I need her to get that card so badly. And that is what I would use my magic wand on, is to pull that card out of wherever they're hiding and give her let her create, like, let her complete that rainbow. It's time. It has to happen for all of us. It's a hobby wide accomplishment when that card surfaces.
Well, we're chuckling. I chuckled. You chuckled. But in all seriousness, I think that speaks volumes to the kind of person you are, Lauren, for to use your wish to help someone else out, right? I don't know if I would have did that. I don't ask myself normally on the show, but if like I don't know if I would have done that. And so kudos to you. That speaks again to you to your personality and who you are. That you're basically using your wish to make someone else's day, if you will. And
I'm very passionate about her
yeah,
finding my
yeah, and hopefully, we're not. Unfortunately, the Hobby Magic one's not really real, but
right.
hopefully that mission gets completed nonetheless as well. I had a mine recently, and I know she threw that out there.
Yep.
Hopefully that happens. I agree, but that's very unselfish of you, and kudos for saying that and being that way. And again, speaks volumes to who you are, and which is awesome. So, with that being said, I always give the guests sort of the final word, where people can see what you're doing, whether it be the articles you're writing, the cards you're creating, day in the life, whatever, social media, no time limit. Put that stuff out there, and that way people can see all the great stuff you do.
Okay. I'm on Instagram. Pretty much that's the only place I'm at, social media wise. Lauren goes here. And I am a writer for Collectibles on SI, and I'm really enjoying that. And there's a lot of really good writers there. So even if you don't want to read what I write, highly recommend going there and checking it out. And then also Hobby News Daily. I write an article once a month, but it's in the name, Hobby News Daily. Danny has a great collective of people contributing. It's a great website. There's a lot of different perspectives on a lot of different topics. And yeah, so those are the three places. And even if you don't want to hear what I'm up to or see what I'm up to, definitely check out Collectibles on SI and Hobby News Daily.
Yeah, one thing I'll throw in there too. Both obviously great sites. Different styles of writing, different types
Yes,
of articles. So it's not one size fits all. You can go to both sides and see all sorts of different pieces. It's not like they're the same articles on each one, and they're not, and
they're
they're not
not.
designed,
Nope.
and they're not designed to be. That's done. That's the way they're set up. So check both of those sites out. Lauren's doing tremendous with her writing on both of those sites, and you can learn some stuff along with me as well. So Lauren, awesome finally having you on. But again, better late than never. Keep up the great work, and we'll have you back. And we won't make you wait this. We won't make you wait this long.
I wait forever. This was fantastic. I really appreciate it.
Well, thank you.
Thanks, John.